Hello. Recently at work, I promised a friend of mine who's been helping me out I would make him an apple pie. It was kind of a joke, but it kind of turned more serious, so I think I'm actually going to make him a pie. Surprisingly, apple pie, super easy to make. I've actually never really made one recently. It's been a little while, but it doesn't take a whole lot. I definitely recommend making your crust from scratch, which is what I'm going to do here in a minute. But also, make sure you have some apples. These are 8 Granny Smith apples, and that's what I'm going to use to make my pie. So get a large mixing bowl, and then you need 4 cups of all-purpose flour. One. 2. 3. And 4. And then you need 1 3/4 cup of shortening. And you can use kind of an animal fat based one or like a vegetable shortening. I have these sticks to use up, but you can also buy it in tubs. So here's 1 cup of it. Here's a 1/2 cup, so 1 1/2 cups. And that uses up my sticks. But then I still need that last 1/4 cup, so I'm going to get it out of my tub. And here's my last 1/4 cup. So that's 1 3/4 cups of shortening. Then we also need 3 tablespoons of white sugar. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Then we need 2 teaspoons of salt. So measure it off to the side so you don't spill it too much. 1. And 2. Now we need to get all this, mix it all together using a pastry cutter or a dough blender. It kind of refers to this thing right here. This is pretty neat. It turns all this into kind of like a crumbly mixture, kind of like cornmeal, if you've ever messed with cornmeal. So you just kind of push down into it. Just keep doing that till it all becomes kind of the same texture, the same consistency. Okay, usually when I've done this before in the past and made pie crusts and things, it's usually more coarse. This is kind of a thicker version because I think this one had a little bit more shortening. But that'll probably make this pie crust taste a lot better. So I think once it looks like this, you're pretty much good to go. Now in a separate small bowl, we need to mix 1 egg. And if you get any shell in there, make sure you get it out. Usually 1 hard hit, you're good to go, but occasionally you'll get little pieces of shell. So I got 1 little piece, not a big deal. Got it out with a spoon easily. So 1 egg, and you need a 1/2 cup of water with that. There's a 1/2 cup. And I said to mix those together, so I'm just going to use a whisk. You just have to mix until the egg and water have come together. Mine's a little frothy. I may have mixed it too much, but it's really not a big deal at all. So once your egg and water are mixed together, pour it into your flour, shortening, sugar, and salt mixture. And then mix all this together. And I'm going to do that using a wooden spoon. And as you can see, there are some chunks of flour I had on the bottom of my bowl. I could have used my dough blender, pastry cutter a little longer, but it's not a big deal. Because as you can see, it's all coming together still. And as you can see, we have this kind of nice dough-like material, and this is just your pie crust. It stays together pretty well. It's not really breaking up much, so this will roll out nicely for our pie. They say to store it in your fridge until you're ready to use it. What I'm going to do actually is pretty much roll it out now, because I'm going to roll it out now and put it in my pie pan now. and store that in the fridge. And then I'm also going to save a little bit off to the side and cut rectangles with it that I can put over the pie, just like those nice apple pies you see in bakeries. So I'm going to flour my surface lightly, although this dough is not a sticky kind at all. So it's not really that big a deal. Make sure I get it all out. It is sticky, but it's not like a bread dough or anything like that. It's because of all that Crisco in there. Or, you know, your vegetable shortening, whichever kind you use. So I'm just going to lightly roll mine out with a rolling pin. And you can go pretty thin with it. I mean, if you think about pies, pie crust, you know, they're maybe 1/4 of an inch thick. Try to roll it out evenly, you know, get a big circle or a big rectangle, kind of like what I'm trying to do here. Because what we need is a 9-inch round, because I'm using a 9-inch pan. So you can kind of put your marks at 9 inches. So I kind of made marks at 9 inches. And you can just guesstimate a lot of this. I'm just going to lightly use a butter knife to cut an approximate circle out of it. It's good to go a little bit over, because then we can fit it to our pan and take off the excess. That's about a 9-inch circle. Here's our pan we're going to be using. So I got it in our pan. Now I'm going to press it in, make sure it firmly fits, and then just kind of overlap the edges with it so it stretches out nice and evenly. I'm going to spread it out a little bit more. Mine was even a little thick at this point still. And you can kind of bend the edges or crimp them, which is what a lot of people do. They give pies that unique design on the edge. I don't remember the exact technique, but there is some sort of crimping you can do, kind of on the edge with a fork. With a fork, you can kind of go around the edge like that for a more basic crimp. You can kind of do, I think, make them like little triangles is more fancy, but I'm just going to do a simple one. It's just a friend at work, you know. I don't have to go all out on this, as long as it tastes good. There we go. So see, I mean, it's not the most even pie crust I put on there, but it's good enough. You know, I still think that looks decent. Especially once we get it full and I put the layers over it, the rectangle crisscross pattern, it'll look really nice. So get this in your fridge, or just put your dough in your fridge and do this later. And I'm going to put my excess pie crust, which honestly, this would be enough to roll out a whole nother 9-inch shell, into a small bowl, and I'm going to get this in the fridge and make my rectangles later. Now we can start preparing the apple part of our apple pie. So first, preheat your oven to 425 degrees. And now we're going to work on our apples. So now we need our 8 Granny Smith apples, peeled and cored. And I'm going to use 4 at a time. So get a nice good peeler. Peel it over your trash can. And just completely go around and get the skin off of these Granny Smith apples. Granny Smiths are one of the most common type of apples used for baking. So now that one's nice and peeled. And then there's actually machines you can buy, kind of hand crank ones that will actually peel and core it for you, which work really well. But I don't have any of those, so I kind of have to do it the old-fashioned way. And I'm going to go into really thin slivers with my apple pie. You know, when you get to the sections that start to have seeds in them, or skin, just make sure you get rid of those. You know, you don't want any seeds or skin making it into the pie. You've probably had an apple pie with skin in it before, and it's not that great. So repeat that process with the second half of this apple, And then you gotta peel, cut up, and get rid of the cores and skin of your 7 other apples. So do it for 8 apples total. Alright, there you go. That's 8 apples peeled, cored, and sliced up. If you're going to be working with apples like this a lot, I definitely recommend a apple peeler and corer. Those are pretty nice. This took me forever. And I'm slow, though. A lot of people are quicker, but still, I mean, 8 apples, that will take you a little while. So now grab a medium saucepan, and I'm going to put mine on medium-low heat. And then you need a half a cup of butter. You need the melted in there. And a half a cup of butter is a whole stick. Let's get our stick in there and let it melt. At this point, our 1 stick, half a cup butter, is almost melted. You can kind of see the outline of it there, but it's starting to disappear and get smaller and smaller. Which is good. That's what we need. So now at this point, we need to stir in 3 tablespoons of flour to kind of thicken it slightly. And I'm going to use a wooden spoon to stir it in. Same one from earlier that I used, just cleaned a little bit. So I'd mix them in one at a time and kind of stir in between every tablespoon. So that was 1 tablespoon. Here's the second one. And then our final 3rd tablespoon. Here it is. And you'll see it's kind of thickening up the butter a little bit. Flour is used as a thickening agent a lot, and so is cornstarch. Now you need a 1/4 a cup of water. So stir that in there. Then you need a half a cup of sugar. So stir that in. Now you need a half a cup of packed brown sugar. So make sure it was nice and packed. And then break it up and stir it in. And the liquid should kind of help break it up. Now, raise the heat up to like a medium-high, because we need to bring this to a boil, and then quickly, as soon as it boils, lower the heat and let it simmer for a little bit. I would say at this point we're getting really close to a boil. A bunch of tiny bubbles are beginning to form, and you can see the smoke kind of coming off of it. So at this point I'm just going to reduce the heat now and let it simmer. So here's our pie crust that's been in the fridge for a little while. And now I'm going to pour all these apples that we worked so hard to cut up into it. And you can see why it's good that you cut them small, because it's hard to fit them all in otherwise. So spread them all out in there as best you can. So I've got some leftover apples on my side of things. So these are just good to eat, or you can coat these in sugar, and they're really good that way too. But here's our pie, and now we need to put the rectangles of pie crust over it, the lattice pattern. That makes it look really nice. So let's get out that extra dough we had and cut it up into rectangles. So here's our extra crust, or pie crust, and we don't really need a whole lot of this. So I'm going to have leftover pie crust too, so I might make some apple dumpling type things with my extra apples and my extra pie crust. So you don't have to be exact, but we need about 9-inch length rectangles. They go across the whole pie, but then we can also do shorter ones too. And I'm going to do mine somewhat thicker. You can do them thinner or however you want, really. And then I'll do 2 of them like 3/4 the length. And as you can see, I need to go a little longer with this. It's not fitting the pie perfectly, so I'm going to roll these out just a little bit in length. I'll take this nice long one I have, Yeah, perfect. And see how it stretches across like that? It's kind of like what you see in a bakery. This is a little thicker. You can go thinner than that. But it still tastes the same. So I'm going to do a few more of those and then crisscross them as well. So now my pie crust has the lattice on top, or the apple pie has it. So now we can pour this butter and sugar mixture that's been simmering over it. And it says pour slowly, and you can definitely understand why. You don't want it to splash everywhere. Okay, so that's in there. Make sure you turn off your stove top. And I'm even going to use the bottom of a spoon to just slightly kind of spread it out, just to get a nice kind of even coating, at least on the top part. That'll make it look nice and golden. Now we need to put this in our pie. We need to put this pie into our oven that's set at 425 for 15 minutes. Then we're going to reduce the heat to 350 and cook it for like another 35 to 40. So nice and gently, I'm going to set it on the rack. Alright, and in 15 minutes we'll reduce the temperature. It's been 15 minutes at 425, so now we need to reduce the temperature to 350 and continue baking for 35 to 40 minutes, or until your apples are soft. And you can kind of test that by poking them with a fork, or even just really looking at them. Alright, it's been 35 minutes at 350 degrees, or you could go 40 minutes. It's up to you. It's whenever the apples really look soft. So now it's time to pull our pie out. Oh, yep. Mine was starting to get a little black on top, so good thing I'm pulling it out now. Probably could have pulled it out a couple minutes ago, but it'll still be good. Well, here it is. After all our hard work, here is our nice, delicious apple pie. The guy I work with should be grateful, and hopefully he'll do more work for me. So there you go. One way to please coworkers. Apple pie.